When you think of the most recognizable Nintendo franchises, what do you think of? The easy answers are Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, all mainstay franchises that garner the most attention, the most sales, the most praise. These are the games that drove this company into the modern age and allowed it to thrive, beloved in the hearts of gamers of all kinds, even breaking into the mainstream. There's something so special about the reveal of a brand new Pokemon game, the next mainline Zelda, or even a new 3D Mario that only comes once a console generation, twice if we're lucky. While the backlogs of games in each of these series are immense at this point, if Nintendo were to direct their focus into solely pumping out new additions, these franchises would start to lose that luster and special feeling found from experiencing their landmark titles for the first time. They know their long-term success is built off of their character-driven design and marketing, and over the years have been establishing new characters and franchises to fill the gaps between huge releases, accruing an absolute embarrassment of riches that often goes neglected. Between the icons, the underrated, even the forgotten, there's something for everyone. And many of these franchises have been long overdue for a new entry. I myself have been craving the return of a particular character for a while now. A character with a rich history of unique design and innovative gameplay. It's not Captain Olimar, Fox McCloud, or even Captain Falcon. His name is Wario, and the trajectory of his platforming games is the definition of innovation and iteration. Let me tell you why Wario deserves more games. wizawhat! I've always been drawn to Wario for reasons I don't fully understand. Maybe it's the fact that his character design is so dramatic compared to his Mario counterparts, or that you never really know what you're gonna get with him. What I do know is that before he was known for microgames, party games, and sports spin-offs, Wario was breaking the mold and carving out his own niche parallel to Mario. He's the antithesis to Mario in just about every way. His visual design is a reflection of his distorted personality, purely focused on greed and treasure seeking. His burly, stout frame and his exaggerated facial features demonstrate how gluttony corrupts. It's weird, it's unsettling, but it's hilarious, and his games always reflect that. It makes it all the more compelling when he accidentally saves the day by doing the old Wario thing, bopping goons and stealing coin. I think Wario's archetype as the anti-Mario has gotten memed a lot over the years, and for good reason, but don't get it twisted. What's often forgotten is the actual game design behind it, and there's no better place to start with than his first series on the Game Boy, Wario Land. Beginning with Super Mario Land 3 Wario Land, the series progressed from a traditional platformer to something wholly unique. Many of the design conventions featured in the Super Mario Land series were carried over, like the standard power-ups and linear level design, but unlike its predecessors, the pace of the game was slowed down significantly, due in part to the limitations of the hardware colliding with Wario's design. Limited screen real estate meant that Wario's giant figure would have trouble navigating through stages just as swiftly as his counterpart Mario, and thematically, it wouldn't make much sense. Instead, Wario Land reaches a state of flow by allowing the player to deal with their obstacles a little more creatively. Wario can still jump on enemies, but this only leaves them briefly stunned, and from there he can pick up and throw them, shoulder bash them, or use the various power-ups to ground pound, dash through the air, or even douse them in fire. This set the foundation for Wario's iconic moveset that persists throughout the entire Wario Land series, even making its way into Super Smash Bros. However, what didn't persist was the level design. Similar in style and length to previous Mario games, which becomes frustrating to deal with because they feel twice as long and punishing due to the slower pace of the game. Because of this, I don't feel as fondly for Wario Land 1 as I do the later games in the series, but I will give it credit for establishing Wario's beloved character design and style of play. Wario Land 2 and 3 are where things get a little more interesting. While they both adopt a similar style, the former acts more as a transitional period between the latter and the original game, retaining the linear structure and level design. However, in true Wario fashion, the games continue to break the mold by restructuring them as puzzle platformers and shaping them around my favorite mechanic from the series, Wario's reactions. You see, between Wario Land 1 and 2, my guy somehow became immortal. Instead of inflicting damage resulting in death and a loss of progress, most enemies simply stun Wario, much like he can do to them. This in itself is a neat way of remedying the frustration that came from the first game's slow pace and punishing level design, but what pushes these games to the next level is how they expand on this mechanic by establishing a gray area between power-up and fail state. Because while some enemies only briefly stun Wario, others can transform him into various states that definitely inconvenience the player, but also give him unique abilities that are required to solve puzzles, ranging from the straightforward Fat Wario or Flat Wario to the more interesting Vampire or Zombie. I think this is such an interesting take on power-ups that is so uniquely Wario, and they work in tandem with the level design to create interesting platforming scenarios that focus more on creative thinking than pure mastery of the mechanics. To be honest, the only game from the original trilogy that I actually grew up with was Wario Land 3. I love this game. It takes this level of creativity to the extreme. Instead of progressing from stage to stage in a linear fashion, each level has 4 different treasures for Wario to find, some of them being access to abilities from the previous game that are also required to find even more treasure. With some of these treasures being gated off by unlockable abilities and world events, the real meat of the game becomes backtracking to these areas later on to more fully explore them and solve more puzzles. There's even a day and night cycle that affects enemy placement and level design. Some pretty ambitious stuff for the Game Boy. The gameplay loop in itself is pretty satisfying, but the biggest problem I had with it was its lack of clear direction. The more stages you unlock as you progress through the game, the more stages there are to backtrack to. And over time, the breadcrumb trail to the end becomes thinner and thinner, while a lot of the treasure I was uncovering was purely optional, only serving to distract me from the main trail. Over time, the quirks of the game begin to see diminishing returns, and because a lot of the design is centered around inconveniencing the player through trial and error, there were many times playing it that I wished it was just a little shorter and more focused. Thankfully for me, there's one more game in the series that cuts the fluff and laser focuses in on everything the series does right, culminating in one of, if not the, best games on the Game Boy Advance.
But look guys, look, it's one of my greatest achievements, Wario Land 4 on the Game Boy Advance.
There's a reason this shit is the greatest achievement. Wario Land 4 is a game so refined, so polished, that I wouldn't even mind if a sequel was made that was just more the same. It may not be as ambitious as what came before it, but the developers clearly put the original trilogy under a microscope to see what worked and what didn't, and incorporated their findings into the development of Wario Land 4. The game begins with Wario back on the hunt for more, this time in search of a recently discovered pyramid housing legendary treasure. This pyramid acts as the hub from which Wario gains access to some of the most uniquely themed worlds I've ever seen in a platformer. But not before completing the entry passage, a classic tutorial stage that gets the player up to speed with Wario's wide variety of moves. Acting as a true sequel to Wario Land 3, Wario retains everything he learned before, allowing this new game to focus on freedom and solid platforming design. No pacing issues, no dead ends, no frustration. Capped off with a simple introductory boss fight, the entry passage sets the stage for what the player can expect moving forward. Each level within a passage tasks Wario with finding a key ghost and 4 pieces of a jewel, both of which gate your progress to the next level and the world boss respectively, followed by an escape sequence, one of my favorite new additions to the series. If you know me personally, you know I love fast and fluid movement in my platformers. While the previous games aren't predicated on their movement, I could overlook it because of the interesting puzzles and platforming scenarios they brought to the table. In Wario Land 4, however, Wario is faster, stronger, and controls more fluidly than any other game he's been a part of, without sacrificing his bruiser-like attributes he's known for, with the more goal-oriented level design really allowing these changes to shine through, the escape sequence being the icing on the cake. Overall, I love this setup, because it streamlines the gameplay loop, eliminating aimless wandering while still retaining aspects unique to the Wario Land series. There's plenty of treasure to find, the boss battles are bigger and better, and they even bring back the reactions. I just wish there were more of them. I think the developers must have established a tight focus on the gameplay loop early on, because from there, they really ran wild with the level design, mechanically and thematically. The world design of Wario Land 4 puts its peers to shame. There's 4 passages that open up after completing the entry passage, each with their own broad theme. The Emerald Passage is probably the most basic of the 4, based solely off nature. But once you drop into Monsoon Jungle, you're greeted with pure visual and auditory bliss. From the lush and intricately designed jungle growth to the subtle rain effect discreetly splashing off the soothing water reflection. The graphical fidelity of this game rivals that of pixel art games released today, on a 3-inch screen no less. And if that wasn't enough, it's coupled with one of the most underrated soundtracks in gaming. Seriously, it's got some jams. The rest of the passages are something out of a dream, the Topaz passage being one of my favorites. It's themed after toys, games, and imagination, complete with levels where you race falling dominoes, navigate a tower of toy blocks, play a board game, and even get chased by this pig-like ghost creature that attacks you with his drawings that come to life. Apparently he's called Hoggus, but in the Spanish version of the game, his name is Porcus, so I will continue to call him that. I could honestly go down the list highlighting the quirks and intricacies of every level in the game because they are just that good. But I think you get the point. With the advantage of 3 previous entries to build off of, Wario Land 4 is the final draft. A game so polished and fun, I wouldn't change a damn thing about it. The sad truth is that after Wario Land 4, after the series had reached peak popularity, it kinda just faded away while WarioWare took the spotlight. There was a new entry on the Wii, but it was so poorly marketed that for a long time, I didn't even know it existed. And to some, it didn't really live up to expectations. To be honest, I'm not really losing much sleep over Wario's trajectory because Wario Land 4 is the perfect send-off, a fully realized experience, a near-perfect game. But much like Wario himself, I just find myself wanting more. I want more Wario Land. I want more Wario platformers. There is one more game I haven't talked about. A spiritual successor, perhaps. It's not revolutionary, it's not perfect, but much like the original Wario Land trilogy, there's just so much potential. I can't help but look at it not for what it is, but what it could be. And it's absolutely criminal there hasn't been a follow-up since. I think it's about time you've been introduced.
Welcome to Wario World.
The truth is, Wario World was poised to be the new flagship series for Wario, the perfect 3D companion series to Wario Land, but for one reason or another, it just never really caught on. I didn't realize it at first, but it definitely wears its inspirations on its sleeves. There's 4 uniquely themed worlds with plenty of enemies and bosses to brawl and treasure to find. His moveset remains fairly faithful to the Wario Land games, and even the optional puzzle rooms from Wario Land 4 return. This time, a core mechanic. The only thing missing here is the reactions. And while that in itself is extremely disappointing, Wario World introduces some new mechanics to try and fill the void. It wastes no time getting right into the action, beginning with Wario up to no good once again. He steals a black jewel with an even darker past that ends up turning all of his treasure into evil spirits before thrusting him into its dreamlike world. And once again, he's off to bop some baddies and get his treasure back. The main gameplay loop of Wario World involves scouring through levels to find jewels that gate off progression, this time hidden beneath trap doors scattered throughout, each housing their own mini platforming puzzle, similar to Wario Land 4. However, where the Wario Land games were more focused on their platforming elements, Wario World acts as more of a hybrid between platformer and beat 'em up. The transition to 3D really opened up the possibilities for how Wario interacts with enemies, taking the opportunity to lean harder into the more brawly aspects of Wario's design. He can still charge and ground pound just like before, with a new standard punch he can throw out, but what's really fun is the addition of his new arsenal of finishing moves. I've got to give credit to whoever designed these. Their application and flashy aesthetics make them feel pretty visceral to pull off, and they do a great job maintaining the flow of combat. With the addition of these finishing moves, the increased focus on combat is actually a pretty welcome change, and I'm happy the developers wanted to explore more gameplay opportunities. However, the handling of enemy design wasn't as well planned, bringing me to the first of many hiccups within Wario World. Don't get me wrong, the visual design is fantastic, and there's plenty of enemies unique to various levels, but the vast majority of combat encounters are with a set of 5 generic enemy types that share the exact same attacks and attributes from level to level. Along with the fact that collecting coins from these enemies is only used for extra lives, a step back from their value in Wario Land 4, fighting these generic enemies over and over makes the combat lose its luster a bit too quickly. It's not as big a deal in most platformers where you can just walk past enemies you don't feel like fighting, but it's a problem when one of the game's core mechanics is riddled with tedium, and it regularly drops you into arenas full of generic enemies or these tedious mini-boss encounters that really begin to overstay their welcome. These elements speak to a wider issue of repetitiveness in Wario World. The level design and set pieces are super fun and memorable, but their flow is off, broken up by these dull combat sections. For that matter, the entire game feels pretty segmented and cyclical, alternating between platforming, combat, and puzzle rooms. And while this isn't really a detriment on its own, it leaves you with this feeling of wanting more because each of the game's core elements don't feel as fleshed out as they could be. However, there are some flashes of brilliance that with a little iteration could really flesh out this game with a potential sequel. You're exposed to this as early as the second level. There's a section near the beginning with a blocked ladder, a spinner contraption, and an endless spawn of enemies. And by activating the spinner with a spin finisher, the barriers between combat, platforming, and puzzle solving are temporarily dismantled, albeit in a very simple way. While these instances are few and far between, seeing these mechanics overlap is what makes the game much more interesting, as the later levels introduce a handful of unique enemies designed for this very purpose. For that matter, the latter half of the game is when the level design's creativity really begins to shine, turning established conventions on their head. It's just a shame there isn't more of it. By the end of the game, Wario World feels like this mixed bag of interesting ideas that end up feeling a bit repetitive due to the lack of depth. But I don't think it deserves this fate of falling into obscurity. That's not how we got Wario Land 4. It took 3 attempts of iteration to create the perfect game, and Wario World deserves that attention. Just think about the possibilities for building off of what this game established. Expand on the combat, add new finishing moves that chain together to increase the flow of combat even further, and allow the player more options to keep things interesting. While the mobs and generic enemies do a decent job of making Wario feel powerful, the focus should be shifted towards adding more unique encounters that mix up the gameplay and allow the core elements to overlap. And for that matter, bring back the reactions from the previous games to act as the missing link between combat, platforming, and puzzle solving. They are sorely missed, especially in the puzzle rooms. If the selling point of Super Mario Odyssey can be interesting transformations, it's crazy to me this hasn't been explored again in a Wario platformer. Imagine an innovative cooperative mode where Waluigi can finally be played in something that isn't a spin-off party game. A co-op beat-em-up romp where players can grief the shit out of each other, while also utilizing finishing moves to explore the environment. Like Wario throwing Waluigi to activate a switch or reach a new area, or Waluigi pile-driving Wario's fat ass into the ground to reach secrets underneath. With the fixed camera perspective and more side-scroller level design, it makes even more sense. Alright, I think I need to calm down a bit. I guess what I'm trying to say with this video is that the desire to return to something that's been done before is warranted, especially with Nintendo, because they've created this mass of iconic characters and worlds that tend to get neglected a lot of the time due to the sheer plethora of them. Nintendo has had their ups and downs, sometimes struggling to find balance between chasing innovation and leveraging their IP. But when they do decide to dig into their backlogs and revive a dormant IP with a great idea and solid design, I think the results speak for themselves. Emphasis on solid design, because some of the stuff they've been doing with their old IPs lately has been kinda not good. Wario might not have as much star power as Mario or Donkey Kong to warrant going all in on a new title, but the framework is already in place to iterate and take the next step towards crafting the next Wario Land 4. In my mind, justifying a return to these ideas with a quicker development turnaround. So let's see what you got, Nintendo. WarioWare is great and all, but I think it's time for a return to form. Give us more platforming greatness, chock full of bruising, reactions, and that classic Wario charm.
And this is my greatest achievement. wizawhat. Subscribe to twitch.tv/Peridactyl.